The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. We continue giving the floor to counsel for Mr. Ieng Sary to continue posing questions to the experts. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon to everyone in and around the courtroom, and good afternoon, Doctor. Before we go into your report a little bit, may I ask, when you examined Mr. Ieng Sary, was he able to get out of bed?
He was able to get out of bed, excuse me, with assistance.
Well, everyone can get out of bed with assistance. Was he able to get out of bed without assistance? On his own accord, that is.
No, he was not.
Was he able to sit up on his own accord?
When he was sitting up, I arranged for him to have some support as well. I mean, he would be able to sit in a chair with a back on it, but not sit on the side of the bed without support.
Well, maybe I inartfully put the question to you. Was he able to, if he's lying down on bed, on his own accord, get himself up into a sitting position on the bed?
No, he had assistance when he was doing that.
Was he able to move from one side to the other on the bed without assistance? You know, to roll on the side?
Yes, he was.
This is unassisted.
That's right.
Okay. And was he able to, did he have full range of motion of his neck? Because you seem in your report to indicate that he's able to move his neck rather freely.
Yes, I tested his neck movement, and he had full movement in his neck.
Did he complain of numbness?
As I indicate in my report, he complained of numbness from just above the wrist and the hands and in the lower part of the shins down on the feet.
Well, what about his legs? Did he complain that his legs were numb at times?
As I said, he complained of some numbness from the distal end of the shin onto his feet.
And in your medical opinion, was that what caused that numbness?
He may well have a peripheral neuropathy, that is, a disorder of the peripheral nerves where the full sensation is not coming back from the peripheral nerves. But he did have preserved position sense when I moved his wrist and his ankle.
Could it also be because he's just lying there in bed, unable on his own accord to move and adjust himself periodically so that his limbs are not becoming numb?
No, that would not cause those problems.
Now, did you check his back to see whether he had any bed sores?
I looked at his back, lower back, didn't examine his buttocks, but there were no sign of any bed sores.
All right. And in your opinion, is he able, on his own accord, for instance, to assist himself in order to relieve himself?
Yes, once he had a bottle, he was able to manage that.
Well, you say once he had a bottle. Somebody has to bring the bottle to him, right?
Well, there was not a bottle right next to him. If he had a bottle right next to him, I think he probably would be able to use that, but I didn't test that.
So it is your opinion from your examination that he's able to reach over, if it's within reaching distance, on his own accord, reach over, grab the bottle, lift himself up, and urinate.
He was urinating lying down, and he probably would need assistance with the whole process.
Now, in your report, you use the word giddiness. And I think at one other point you use dizziness. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know, the difference. Is there a difference? Is one inclusive in the other, or are you using these words interchangeably? And forgive me if I'm being simple.
I'm using them interchangeably. They're both non-specific terms, and as I said, they can indicate a number of different problems, either a spinning sensation, vertigo, or a lightheaded faint feeling if the blood pressure is low, or a sense of instability if the person's balance or strength is such that they don't feel secure when they're standing.
All right. So, just to make sure, I'm not being critical, but just to make sure when I read your report and I see giddiness, because I'm not used to that word, at least in our context, or my context, this might be different. Giddiness and dizziness is basically the same thing.
That's correct.
Now, when somebody is dizzy or is experiencing this feeling of dizziness, would that in any way impair their ability to concentrate to the level that you're concentrating now? And I see I have your full concentration. What do you think?
As I said, his dizziness is arising from three main causes. Firstly, a vertigo feeling when he turns his head, and that is brief, and with a neck collar that should be prevented. A faint feeling if he's sitting for prolonged periods and his blood pressure is low, but again, if he's lying in his bed on the holding cell, that won't be a problem. And then, of course, if he tries to stand and feels unsteady, but again, that's not going to be a problem when he's listening to the court proceedings.
Doctor, I heard your testimony on direct examination this morning. You were very clear. But my question was, and if you could answer my question, is would dizziness, albeit however brief or however extended, would that affect an individual's ability to concentrate to the level that you're concentrating, which is the standard that we set this morning based on your testimony?
Well, it's impossible to speculate across the whole range of dizziness. When we talk about Ieng Sary, no, his dizziness would not interfere with his ability to concentrate.
All right. So your answer is limited to my client, but you're not willing to go so far as to say with any degree of medical certainty that dizziness would not affect or impact one's ability to concentrate. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Well, what I've said in my report is that dizziness arises from multiple different causes, and in certain causes it may impair the person's ability. So one can't speculate across the whole range of dizziness. It's important to specify in relationship to the particular person and the particular cause of his dizziness.
So the answer to my question, doctor, is yes.
Well, the answer to your question is that it is of no relevance because we're not speculating about everyone who has dizziness. We're talking about one specific person.
All right. Very well. Now, can you please tell us how you measured the level of dizziness? What exact test did you perform at which time so that we know the range of dizziness that Mr. Ieng Sary was feeling at any particular time? What specific tests? Name them, so then we could probably have either a discussion or have someone else look into those tests.
The two tests I used to determine the cause of the dizziness was the Dix-Hallpike manoeuvre, which is where the person is taken, the head's turned and they lay backwards to see if there's any spinning sensation and any nystagmus, and there was. And the second test was his lying and standing blood pressure. Dizziness is a subjective sensation, so there's no test you can actually use to measure it.
Well, doctor, that was exactly what I was getting at. That was the thrust of my question. Because my question was the degree. How were you able to measure? Because now you're saying his dizziness, in your medical expertise, would not affect his ability to concentrate. He can concentrate as well as you are concentrating right now. And so my question is, what exact test did you perform that would give you the range of dizziness that he's experiencing? And so if I understand you, there is no test. It's a subjective matter, right?
Well, let me clarify again. It depends very much on the cause of the dizziness. And I undertook tests to see if he had benign positional vertigo, which is a dizziness or vertigo that only lasts a few seconds, and with a neck collar to prevent head movement, won't interfere with his ability to concentrate. Secondly, if he had persistent low blood pressure, that may well interfere with his ability to concentrate, but he's not going to be in a situation where that is an issue.
Now, let me pause. Now, I think we got that right. I think we understand each other. Well, I think I do. Now, it seems to me that the Cambodian doctors, and there's a board of them, they had reached a different conclusion as to why Mr. Ieng Sary may experience some dizziness. Is that correct? And I know that you've discounted it, but I just want to get a confirmation on that.
Yes, they felt that he had vertebrovascular ischemia. That is an impairment of the blood supply from the vertebral arteries. Now, if I can clarify that, Ieng Sary has long-standing high blood pressure, and he also has heart disease, so narrowing of the coronary arteries. He almost certainly has atherosclerosis involving the blood supply to the head, as do most people, especially in Western society, of his age. But none of his symptoms currently can be attributed to that. As I've said, giddiness in the form that he has it is not a single isolated symptom of vertebrovascular ischemia, and I've given you a reference to that. And there are no other symptoms or signs on examination to indicate that he has brainstem or cerebellar strokes or ischemia. That doesn't mean that he's not at risk of that in the future, but there's no sign of that damage from that at present.
All right. And now, forgive me if I'm not going to go too much into the technical aspects of it, but based on what you just indicated to us, with all his particular ailments, it is not your medical opinion that any one of those or a combination, in other words, the way he is now, that would not in any way impact his ability to concentrate the way you're concentrating here today.
He will tire easily, obviously, because he lacks physical ability. All his movements require his full strength. But given that he has been largely inactive and he will be lying down, I don't think that will be a problem.
All right, thank you, Doctor. Now, but the bottom line is, these doctors, and in particular Dr. Lim Simvuta, who came and testified, based on your medical expertise, just got it wrong. Maybe I'm being too blunt, but sometimes bluntness cuts through the chase, as they say.
I think perhaps counsel was being a bit blunt. The other doctor testified to a lot of things, and there was some agreement, some difference in opinion. To say that this other doctor came to court and just got it wrong just leads to a very misleading answer, if he's to answer that yes or no. I think the difference of opinion has been put, and the professor has answered it. I don't think it helps to say that the previous doctor just got it wrong, because it's really unclear as to what he's talking about. I think he should be specific as to what aspect he got wrong.
Doctor, did you not tell us earlier, and in your report you seem to indicate, that you disagree with the findings of the previous doctors who came and testified? That's in your report. So I'm not asking you to speculate. I'm not asking you to conjecture. It's very, very clear. There's no need for objections. So in your report, do you not find that they have it wrong, at least that aspect of their evaluation?
What I'm saying is that there are no signs or symptoms at present that would indicate that Ieng Sary is suffering from lack of blood supply to his brain. And that's not to say, as I said, that he may not have a stroke in the future, but currently there are no indications that impaired blood supply to his head is contributing to his symptoms, and there are no signs on examination of impaired blood supply, previous strokes, for example.
And that was the testimony of the Cambodian doctors, wasn't it?
They felt he had vertebrobasilar ischemia, as I've said. That's been a diagnosis which many symptoms were attributed to, but current evidence would indicate that those symptoms are more often due to other causes, and I've outlined the causes in my report.
And could we say that you provided a second opinion? Would that be one way of putting it?
Well, I've provided my opinion, yes.
All right. And in fact, you go on to say that he's on certain medication, and in your opinion, that medication should be reduced, if not at some point be eliminated, because that also may be contributing to, or in fact is contributing to, his dizziness.
It may be contributing to his dizziness. In studies of dizziness, population studies, around 23-25% of patients have medications that are contributing to dizziness. Now, I'm not sure that it will make very much difference to Ieng Sary, because he's had this vertigo, the spinning sensation, for some time, and that was before these medications were used.
But nonetheless, this is also a second opinion, your opinion. You differ with what the Cambodian doctors are treating him with. Could we call it that? And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just simply pointing out the obvious.
Yes, you could. If you were a patient of mine, I would gradually reduce those medications.
In other words, you disagree with the Cambodian doctors.
My approach to his management may well be different. I commonly reduce medications because often in older people, especially older people on a number of medications as he is, do suffer adverse effects from medication and they do need to be reduced.
Thank you. Now, I looked at your report and it doesn't appear, and maybe this is an oversight in typing out the report, but it would appear, at least in paragraph 4 of your report, that you did not consult with or have an opportunity to discuss Mr. Ieng Sary's medical condition with Dr. Lim Sivuta. Is that correct? It's not in the report. At least I don't see it.
Now, if his name's not listed there, then he would not have been
consulted. Okay, so was it...
The arrangement was that all the doctors treating Ieng Sary would meet with me both before and after I had spent time with Ieng Sary, and I've listed their names there.
Right. Okay, and I'm not being critical. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't some oversight, and then I jumped to conclusions. So now that we know that you didn't meet with him, but we do know that you had access to his testimony and that you had access to my letters, which describe his testimony, and it would also stand to reason that you knew that he was one of the treating physicians. May I ask, why was it that you were unable to meet with Dr. Lim Sivuta?
I couldn't answer that. I didn't make the arrangements for the meeting. It was my understanding that all those treating Ieng Sary would be at the preparatory meeting with me, and then we'd meet again after I had assessed him. So whether he's been on holiday or away, I don't know.
Thank you. And I take it from your answer, you never asked to meet with the doctor. I mean, I'm not being critical, but bottom line is, you knew he was one of the treating physicians. When all the doctors showed up, he was not there. You didn't ask the question like, oh, by the way, what about Dr. Lim Sivuta, who testified, has been the treating physician? Where is he? May I speak to him?
No, I didn't, because I wasn't aware that he was not there. I just asked each of the doctors to note their names down on my record of the meeting so that I would know who had attended. There was the neurologist there who had been involved with Ieng Sary's treatment. And as you said, there's considerable discussion amongst the doctors as to the diagnosis and the treatment.
So I take it from your answer, you are confident that it would not have been necessary, or perhaps superfluous, to meet with Dr. Lim Sivuta since you had the rest of the doctors, the board, available to you to discuss his condition.
Yes, I felt I've got a full account from the doctors, from both the general doctors looking after him, also from the specialist neurologist and the specialist cardiologist.
Now, can you tell us which one of the doctors, or collection of doctors, or was it the entire board, that determined that Mr. Ieng Sary was suffering dizziness because his brain wasn't getting enough blood? I'm putting it sort of in the vernacular so we can all follow along.
I'm not sure who decided that or who had that particular opinion. I indicated quite clearly to the doctors that I did not feel that was the cause of his problems.
And did you have access to their medical reports, the actual examinations themselves, the test results, in a language which you could follow along and interpret?
Yes, I did. I've had copies of all their medical reports. I've also had the CT scan of the cervical region, which, as I indicate in my report, I've discussed with our Professor of Radiology in Dunedin. And we're both of the conclusion that the changes within the cervical spine were no greater than one would expect in a man of Ieng Sary's age, and that there was no indication of encroachment on the vertebral arteries. As I've said, you can do additional tests of the vertebral arteries through either CT angiography or MRI angiography, but there are not the symptoms or the signs that would justify those additional tests.
Thank you. Now, I take it, Doctor, that from your answers that you feel that you had a sufficient amount of time to prepare the report that you did prepare. And of course, if you needed more time, you would not have hesitated to ask for more time.
No, I had plenty of time. I had time to prepare before coming here by reading the doctor's reports and also reviewing the literature myself. I had the two occasions to see Ieng Sary and ample opportunity to take a history from him and to do the necessary examination.
All right. Now, going back to something I mentioned this morning, and help me out here. I don't mean to push on this issue, but again, we've established that you did not examine him under simulated conditions as a court proceeding. But would it be fair to say that you did not test him in the afternoon to see what he might have remembered in the morning? And I'm not talking about who his children are. I'm talking about something that he would have been concentrating on, assuming that he was capable of doing it. And then to test him later on to see whether he was able to recall and to discuss those matters.
No, but when we met in the afternoon and again the next day, it was quite clear that he didn't have any problems with recall as to what had been done previously. He was aware when we did the Dick's Horpike manoeuvre again what was involved.
Thank you. Now, have you been asked at any point in your career to provide a second opinion, aside from what you did here today, but back home?
My whole professional life involves giving a second opinion. I see patients on referral from their general practitioners at outpatients. And, of course, when I'm looking at my patients in the ward, they've already been seen by the house physician and registrar. So I spend my whole professional time, when I'm involved in clinical practice, giving second opinions, if not tertiary opinions, quite commonly.
So I take it within the medical profession, that's sort of a common thing for doctors to sort of, give second opinions or third opinions to examine, to make sure that whatever the diagnosis is accurately or as best as accurately discovered.
It depends very much on the expertise of the doctor. If the person is involved in primary care, that is a general practitioner, he or she will be giving a primary opinion. If one is a consultant, then one is asked to give a second opinion by the primary care physician. And often in hospital, for example, if a patient has been admitted under cardiology or neurology, then we may well get called in to give a further opinion.
Thank you. So from that, I think if I understand you correctly, there may come occasions where someone with a different specialty may be called in to give a further opinion. In other words, look at it from a different context, a different angle, different perspective.
Yes, that is so.
Okay, thank you. And I take it, now you told us that you've been asked to give a second opinion. To your knowledge, do you know whether another doctor has ever been asked to give a second or third opinion to your opinion?
If I wanted a further opinion, then I would ask for it. For example, if I have a patient with cancer, I would ask the oncologist, the cancer specialist, to come and give his or her opinion. But ultimately, especially in geriatric medicine, it's very important that the physicians such as myself remain in overall control of what's happening.
All right. But certainly, it's not uncommon in your profession for the patient also on their own to ask for a second or third opinion, especially when the news sometimes is not so optimistic.
Yes, they may, and we would discuss it with the patient, and if there was a good reason for a further opinion, then we would ask for that.
Now, getting back to how we started this morning, and perhaps we got off on the wrong foot. I might have been overly exuberant, first thing in the morning and all that. When we were discussing the letter that we received from our Harvard professor, who had an opportunity to look at your report. If you have it handy, let me just read one part of it. It says, "It is clear that his methodology is unacceptable by any generally accepted as reliable standard for forensic psychiatric evaluation of competency to stand trial." And then he lists 3 reasons. Now, do you see that, Doctor?
I've read that, and I'll make comment on it. Firstly,
if I may, I don't want to go into the specifics of this yet. I just want to make sure we're going to go step by step, and I will give you an opportunity to provide your comment on this. But I just want to go step by step on this, if you'll permit me.
The President, co-prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Your Honour, I object to the line of questioning. In terms of the ruling that we had this morning, the purpose of this document was or seeking medical assistance or consultants, was to assist the parties in understanding the professor's report. Judge Cartwright has said this morning that was the reason why that was allowed. Now we're going into the realm of putting statements from people that are not experts before this court, and it's giving them a level of importance in these proceedings which there hasn't been a proper opportunity for this person that they've consulted to even review the medical documentation, which he's discussed, and even sort of take time to prepare an informed report. Normally, the rules are that before a document is specifically put and specifically quoted, it needs to pass the Rule 87.4 test as admissible evidence, and we would certainly object to that. But we don't object to the underlying basis of this opinion to be put directly to the professor in relation to his work, but to put these statements to the professor we would object to because we believe the quality of the report and the time taken to prepare for it is certainly not sufficient.
Mr. President, if I may respond to this 5-minute objection, I thought I was following exactly the guidance provided to me by Judge Cartwright, who also went into this letter. I don't call it a report because I don't want to mislead anyone that this is an actual report. I specifically stopped the doctor from going on into this area because I don't want to get into a lengthy debate on this particular document, but merely to get him to acknowledge that that's what this letter says from a doctor from the Harvard University Medical School who is a professor like himself and who has some 30 years experience in the area of forensic psychiatry. My next set of questions were going to be, because we just discussed how this particular doctor gives second and third opinions and sometimes bring in others from other areas to look into the opinions of doctors. I wanted to give the gentleman an opportunity to tell us whether it would, in his opinion, or to express his opinion, why he thinks his report, his work, should not undergo any scrutiny. So that was the thrust. Now, doctors disagree all the time, but that's the purpose of my questioning. And I raise this, Mr. President, because earlier the doctor seemed to flag and telegraph to the judges, to you, that it's unnecessary. And I take that as a way of saying, I don't want my work being scrutinized by an expert.
The President, Professor Campbell, you may now respond.
Thank you for the opportunity to respond. Firstly, no expert is an expert when he's basing an opinion on very little information and not the full story. Secondly, it's important to recognise that we had a very well-qualified forensic psychiatrist who examined Ieng Sary in August, and his opinion was that he was fit to stand trial, and that's clearly outlined the reasons for that in that report of the 3rd of September. What I have said is that I have not been aware of any change in Ieng Sary's cognitive function from the time that report was written until the current time. So I do not see that there's a need to invite, for example, Dr. Sina Fazell back to repeat that assessment.
All right, but I thought earlier you had given us the impression that it was unnecessary to have this particular professor be engaged to give a second opinion or a third opinion or to examine Mr. Ieng Sary. And as I take it from your answer, you're saying no, you're not of that opinion at this moment.
You're referring to the Harvard professor?
Yes, precisely.
Yes. No, I feel there is no need at all. Ieng Sary has been fully assessed by Dr. Sina Fazell, who is very well qualified, very experienced forensic psychiatrist from Oxford, and his opinion is clearly expressed in the report of the 3rd of September. As I've said, there has been no significant change in the situation since then.
Now, you have looked at...
The President, Counsel, please be reminded that you have 5 more minutes to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Now, obviously, you've seen the CV from the Harvard professor. It's a simple question. It's a yes or no. He's seen the CV. It's on the record, Mr. President. I don't see the reasons why Mr. Smith deliberately wants to obstruct the proceedings.
I take offence to those remarks. That's absolutely not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is to make sure that counsel follows the ruling of the trial chamber. And the ruling of the trial chamber was that this report or this letter was to assist in their understanding of the professor's report. Reading out CVs of people at Harvard or whatever university it doesn't do that. I'm not sure why he's actually doing this, but it's certainly not relevant to the exercise and certainly not what Your Honours have endorsed.
Mr. President, since my learned colleague has an inability to follow what I'm trying to do, the doctor here just said that this individual, a professor from Harvard, is not an expert. That's exactly what he said. He said he's no expert. Now, we had not tendered an expert report, but I would like this doctor to first confirm whether he's seen the CV, and second of all, whether he can confirm or deny this doctor, this professor, being an expert. Maybe he doesn't have an opinion, but certainly if he's seen the CV, a rather impressive 29-page CV, he should be in a position to tell us whether this person would at least meet the criteria of being an expert.
Your Honour, the professor didn't say, or the context of what he said was not that the professor could not be an expert. That's not the context of what he said. What he said was that he couldn't provide an expert report on Ieng Sary's health condition or mental condition. That was the context in what he said. To actually put words in the professor's mouth that this person is not an expert in some particular capacity is not appropriate to do. And that's certainly what the professor did not say that.
The President, Counsel Canoas, you are advised to rephrase what you are talking about, and I'm afraid that you are now talking about something which is not within the scope of the hearing today. You have already been informed that today we are examining the report submitted by the expert, the report on his examination of Mr. Ieng Sary during the time Mr. Ieng Sary had been admitted to the hospital, and that the topic being discussed today is more about whether Mr. Ieng Sary is able to participate in the proceedings or not. But the Chamber notes that you have used some inappropriate words that are not relevant, and for that we would like to say that you have no more time left to put questions to the expert.
Well, Mr. President, I do intend to make my record, because the mentioning of the professor from Harvard came from the bench. It did not come from the defense. This doctor was chosen by you. He wasn't selected by the defense or the parties. Obviously, the doctor has every reason to be very guarded about his own expertise. He has no compunction saying that the Cambodian doctors are wrong and that he is right, but he does not wish to have others look at his reports and examine and give a second opinion or a third opinion. This is not the first time that the professor from Harvard has been exceedingly critical of Dr. Campbell's work. And the whole purpose of this discussion now, in light of his own admissions, the
President, again, Counsel, you had been giving the floor to examine the report compiled by the expert, not an opportunity to verbally attack the expert or anyone here. So many of your questions did not fall within the scope of the hearing today. Professor Campbell, you may proceed.
Thank you. I'd just like to clarify a couple of points. Firstly, I did not call into question the expertise of the professor from Harvard. I did call into question his opinion because it was not based on all the facts in the files. And thirdly, the reason I do not feel we need another forensic psychiatrist examination is that we have had Ieng Sary very recently examined by a very competent, experienced forensic psychiatrist, Sina Fazell.
And that's your opinion.
Now, those are the facts. Sina Fazell is a very well-qualified forensic psychiatrist. He has examined Ieng Sary recently, as you will see from the report of the 3rd of September, and there is no evidence of change in Ieng Sary's cognitive or mental state since then.
Doctor, it's your opinion that another expert should not be called in. That's what I meant. And in particular, this one, who is critical of the manner in which you conducted the tests and prepared this report.
The President, Mr. Campbell, you should not respond to this question anyway. Since it is now appropriate time for adjournment, the chamber will adjourn for 20 minutes. Court officer is now instructed to assist Dr. Campbell during the break and having returned to the courtroom by 25 to 3 rather.